So this class is on professional print and layout. I wanted to do an update because I did this class over a year ago, and there is a new version out now. There will be another new version out. I don't know exactly when, in the next few months. I hate having old information on the internet. I spend a lot of my time working with people who have received old or misinformation. So I went to Brandon and said, I think we really need to do an update, especially because a lot of things have changed in terms of how to load drivers in macOS Monterey. Apple, as usual, kind of just does what they want to do. And then the rest of us have to figure out what's going on. So I first off, I wanted to kind of do a refresher on how to load your driver for printers onto brand new Apple systems. I'm getting a ton of calls from people who are buying new computers or migrating from old computers, and there's certainly a new trick. Again, this program is very feature rich, and while I'm going to cover a lot, there might be questions that you have that that I might miss, and I want to be able to make sure I get everybody's questions and issues taken care of. So I'm going to share my screen here. I want to just simply show you that when I go to find Canon software, I do a search for Canon USA support, 3 words, and that is going to bring up the Canon support page. Now, on some people's web browsers, I've noticed that they have ads and stuff that pop up. Make sure you go to usa.canon.com support. Make sure you go to the actual Canon page. And when you click on it, it's going to look like this. This has also changed in just the last couple of weeks, and they are continuing to update their website. So what you need to do here is type in your printer. And so I usually do, like, if it's Canon Pro-1000 or a Canon Pro-4100 or whatever your printer is, you'll see a pop-up that comes up here. And you will, in fact, I'm going to do the Canon Pro-1000 for right now. And then you click on that link, and then it goes to the software and downloads page. So from here, you can click on this here, and then you see it's detected a Mac, that I'm on a Mac, but it has not really identified what the specific operating system is. Somewhere along the line after Catalina, none of these websites really started just automatically popping up or populating your OS version. So you have to click on that, and I'm now on the latest version of Mac OS 12.5.1. So here's all of your software. And I usually just take the CUPS driver, which is the printer driver, and you download it and run the installer like you normally would. I'm not going to go through that right now. You'll see here there's Canon Professional Print and Layout 1.3.0. That's the latest version as well. So here's the trick. The installer you've seen, you run it, it tells you to agree, install, type in your password, Here's the problem. I'm going to go System Preferences, and I'm going to click on Printers and Scanners. And this is happening both on Canon and Epson printer drivers. So you notice here I have the Canon Pro-1000. Here I have a Canon Pro-4100. I have an Epson SureColor P900. If I click on my driver here and I click Options and Supplies, you'll see I have driver version 24.20.0.0, right? That's how I check to make sure the driver's downloaded proper and installed properly. I'm going to delete my driver right now. Okay, then I'm going to add it. And you're pretty much all familiar with this, right? When the driver gets loaded, it's going to print and the printer's connected, it's going to pop up here. But there is a really big issue right now. So I'm going to click on my Pro 1000. And then you're going to see it's going to say used and it's going to say Canon Pro 1000. I'm going to add it and it's going to add the wrong driver. This is absolutely important. I can't stress how important this is. See where it says Canon Pro 1000 series AirPrint? This is bad. AirPrint is Apple's limited functionality driver used for the purpose of being able to print to your printer easily from your iPhone or your iPad. That's what Apple cares about. They don't care about you and I who want to make beautiful, perfect museum quality prints. And this is causing people's color to get really thrown off. I can't tell you how many times people are calling me saying, all my flesh tones are now reds and oranges. It's crazy. So you don't have as much control with this version of the driver. So I urge you to click minus if that says AirPrint, right? Oh, and by the way, if I click back here to options and supplies, it says driver version 3.0, right? So we know this is wrong. So we're going to click minus, delete printer, then click add again. And this is the extra step. Click on your printer. Over here, it's going to say use. Do not use that one. Click select software. And then click the driver and you can search for it. Like if I was going to do a 4100, I could, 4100, you could search for it. Do Pro 1000, then click this, click OK, and then do add. And now you'll see that the real driver is being loaded. Come on. There it is. So now it no longer says AirPrint and it says options and supplies, and I have my real loader, my real driver loaded. That is going to solve a ton of issues for people. So just please make sure the AirPrint version of the driver is not loaded. So to control the printer, you need the driver. And then of course, this class is on professional print and layout. So I just wanted to kind of go over that real quick. Now, professional print and layout, you download the installer and you run it, and it will create on your, let's go to the Finder, and I'm going to go to Go. A lot of people don't know about this Go menu. When I found the Go menu, oh my God, it solved so many issues for me. I can get to things really quickly. So when you install professional print and layout, goes into a folder here called Canon Utilities. And here it is. So professional print and layout, number one, can only be used with the Canon Pro 200. It's called the Pro 200, which is a little 13-inch desktop dye-based printer. The Pro 300, which is a 13-inch pigment-based printer. The Pro 1000, and all of the 24-inch and larger imagePROGRAF printers, the old Pro 2000, 4000, 6000, the new 2100, 4100, and 6100, as well as the S series printers. So this is not going to work on Lori's old IPF 6400. She's still going to be using the old imagePROGRAF print plugin for that, which is a great product, but they didn't go back that far. So this is really what have established for people as the new printing interface. Now you can launch it as a standalone application by simply double clicking on it. And I have it down in my dock. Nope, Peter Guerrero raised his hand.
Yeah,
okay,
you're now in Photoshop, right?
Nope. Well, I was in Photoshop over back here, but I'm not there yet. I just have Photoshop open. I now have professional print and layout open.
And where is professional print and layout? Is it in system preferences?
Nope. It is in your again, I was over here. So I'm in the Finder, right? I'm in my applications folder, Canon Utilities, and in professional print and layout. So Canon, when you
Okay.
run the installer, it puts it there. Then what I do is I usually take it here and I go and put it in my dock, right? So you can use it as a standalone application. You can use it as a plugin for Photoshop and a plugin for Lightroom.
But
Okay, so
but
right
that's
now I'm
not
just
going
kind
to
of
work.
showing you where it resides.
Okay, but that's not going to work on a Pixma Canon 100, for example.
It didn't go back that far. Pixma 100 has been replaced by the Pro 200. So,
Okay.
so in the Pixma Pro 100, you can still use Print Studio Pro, which is still available. It's up to version 2.2.5, and it will, and they're going to continue to update it for operating system compatibility only. This is the program moving forward, but unfortunately, they didn't make it backwards compatible with the Pro 100. So, okay, so I've simply double-clicked the program, and I'm now in professional print and layout over here. And the neat thing about professional print and layout is that you can have stored settings. So I have different layouts here that everything in that column can be stored as a preset. So if I get confused, I can always go back to a standard setup. I can also print to multiple printers. I have a Pro 1000 here. I could print from the same interface. So you'll see also that two different versions of the program get loaded. I have the Pro 1000 now, and then I have the Pro 4100. And you'll see in the Pro 4100, I now have roll paper preview. I have a different listing of media files that I've created. These are all custom media files I've created using another tool from Canon called a media configuration tool, which I would love to do a video on in the near future. That could take a whole hour in and of itself. But as you can see, I have created custom media files that are the names of the papers I'm printing, and I have my profiles attached to them. So when I go down here, they load automatically. And I've set this up at the print lab at LACP as well. So I'm going to go back to the Pro 1000 because I assume that most of you are having desktop printers. And I'm going to go over through the interface for the desktop printers. And as you can see with the Pro 1000, I have a different set of media settings. I have also only single sizes for my pages, whereas if I go to the Pro 4100, because I'm printing on a roll printer there, I have two sizes for every size, right? So if I go back to the 4100, you'll now see that if I go back to the 4100, so now you see I have a lot more paper sizes, and I actually have two sizes for every size. I have a portrait, which is for feeding sheets, and then I have a landscape one for printing rolls. So let's go back to the Pro 1000 for right now. Okay, so the nice thing about professional print and layout is that everything is in one column, and everything is in the order that you need to choose the features that you want, right? So instead of going into File and Print in Photoshop, you got to go to File, Print, and then you got to go to Page Setup, and then you have to go to a bunch of different drop-down menus. It's very easy to get confused, very easy to miss something. So I really like this program because it's very organized, and it's simple to a certain extent, but it also gives you a lot of advanced features. So I am going to go to my desktop, and I am going to drag and drop an image. If I can get back to my desktop, let's hide Lightroom Classic for right now. Okay, so I'm going to take a photo And I'm going to go back to professional print and layout. So the nice thing about professional print and layout as well is that I can take, if my photo is finished, it's ready to go, right? I could just take it and drag and drop it in there. Okay, so when you open professional print and layout for the first time, there's going to be this red area around it. It's called a slot, and I usually get rid of it. I usually literally just click on it and get rid of it, because what I like to do is size my images at 100% and print them at, and size them to 300 PPI and drag and drop it in there. Now I know that the image is 100%. You see here, it says image size 9.4 by 6.26, and the output image size is 9.4 by 6.26. So I know it's 100%. If I go back down, I could take my image, I can shrink it, and I could make it bigger. But what most people don't realize is when you're doing this, you're actually changing the pixel density of your image. Canon printers like files that are set to 300 PPI or multiples of. You could do 600 PPI if you want. Never really seen a big difference, but 300 PPI is my standard, and I want to make sure my image is sized to that. When I do this, then I'm increasing the pixel density. It could be like 453 now. It could be like 600 here. If I make it bigger, it could be like 250 now, right? So we want to make it 100% at 300 PPI. So you also saw that I have some right click controls. I've got delete, copy, rotate. I can rotate the image, rotate it right, rotate it left. If I want to get it back to 100%, I can do a left click, and this interesting box here that comes up that says slot size. I could make this slot size, which is this red area. Don't ask me why they called it a slot. It's a slot. Could be a frame. I don't know. They call it a slot. So if I want to make the slot size the same size as the image size, i.e. 100%, these here are there because I've chosen them in the past, right? So it's going to kind of remember your last three choices. So if it isn't there, you can go down to the bottom here and go image size. So this is now 100%, okay? Again, I go down here. If I hover over it, you see this little box that comes up. I'm actually printing it at output is 7.015 by 4.672. I want to make it 100%. Since I've chosen image size, it's not now at the top, so I'm going to go right there. So now, again, this is 100%. Now, you can make this slot size kind of any size you want. Let's say you wanted to make it, let's say, where is it? Let's make it 8 by 10, right? So there's 8 by 10, but you now see the slot is no longer the same aspect ratio as the image, right? So if I make this smaller here, you see the slot is bigger. So you could do something like this if you wanted to. If you really just wanted to make your image 8 by 10, you could go here and fill the slot with the image, and it'll do kind of a rudimentary cropping to it. I usually personally always kind of print full frame. So I'm going to make that slot again fit to the aspect ratio of the image. So there it is, back to hugging the image. And again, I'm going to make it the same size as the image size. So it's now 100%. So I'm kind of a 100% to 300 PPI. I know it says DPI there. It is wrong. I love it when the manufacturers get messed up here. Let me get it back over there. So see where it says DPI, that really should be PPI. Even the manufacturers get confused with the terminology. When it's on your computer, it's a pixel, right? If you're in Photoshop here, and I go to the image size, you'll see that this is pixels per inch. So it doesn't get turned into a dot until it gets on a piece of paper. So that's just kind of a pet peeve of terminology there for me. Okay, so we've got our slot, we've got our image at 100%. We're chosen the Pro 1000. You can also do multiple images on a page in professional print and layout. So if I do this, now I could take another image, pop it in there. If I wanted to, let's say, let me go back over here, go back to my photos, bring this. Bring this over here, come back over here. Okay. So let's say I have a different image I want to drop in there. Just drag and drop it in there. Now, all of this dragging and dropping I'm doing, there is a rule. The file has to be a JPEG or a TIFF file. It can't be a PDF. It can't be a PSD file. It also has to have a color space. It can't be grayscale. It can't be CMYK. It has to be a JPEG, or sorry, it has to be Srgb, has to be Adobe Rgb 1998 or Profoto in order for you to be able to drag and drop files in here. Okay, so there is, in addition to multiple images on a page, which also allows you the flexibility to be able to resize things and reorient them and do layouts on the fly. This
So
is what we call,
I do have a question.
okay,
Should I wait to ask it?
no, go ahead. I love to be interrupted. It's my favorite thing.
Are you being sarcastic?
No, really, I mean, I'm here for you. This class is for you. I know this program.
Okay.
Right? If I'm not explaining something clearly, I want you to ask so that I guarantee you, everybody else, there are many other people that have the same question. So go ahead, fire it off.
Well, I hope so. So I usually use when you were talking about the color profile, that it needs to be the 1998 RGB. I usually use that, but then there's some images that I got back from a scanner, and they said it, I don't know why, but they're all like set to something like Aztec. I've never seen this color profile before, and I don't.
Aztec is a scanner.
Hmm.
So it's just it's a color space assigned by the scanner where they scan from film.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's an Aztec scanner color space, just in Photoshop, set it to Srgb or Adobe Rgb 1998. If it's film, Srgb was designed as a reference color space that would represent the maximum color space of film. So when you're scanning film, Srgb is fine. If you're going to push the colors out of Srgb into Adobe Rgb 1998 in Photoshop or Lightroom, then Adobe Rgb 1998 is really what our printers, all of these dye and pigment based printers, that's the color space that is standard and what they were built around. But Srgb is fine. The Aztec, it's the same thing on Epson. You can get like when you scan in film from an Epson scanner, you get an Epson color space. If you're doing black and white, it'll say grayscale, or it'll say 20 dot gray or whatever. Just in Photoshop, choose the color space, Srgb or Adobe Rgb 1998.
Okay.
Okay.
With the difference between the Srgb and the 1998 in a physical sense after it's been printed, what sort of difference might you see? Like,
so here I knew you were going to ask that question. So this is a program called Color Think Pro, and if I click this off, click that off, that's Srgb color space, right? So if you have a file that's Srgb, all the color is going to be in there. Now, this is Adobe Rgb 1998. So you can see it's bigger. But if your color is within sRGB and you make it Adobe RGB 1998, you're not going to see any difference. You're not going to be adding color, right? If it's already here, Adobe RGB 1998 covers sRGB.
Got it.
Okay, so a lot of people will, take an sRGB file and convert it, to Adobe RGB 1998, but you're not really doing anything because you can't add the color. The only reason, if you have a file that is sRGB, the only reason why I would make it Adobe RGB 1998 is if in Photoshop, you're going to like increase the saturation and push it out into this area, right? But for printing, both are totally acceptable, right? Then we have the third color space, which is Profoto Rgb, which is huge, right? In fact, let me, there we go. I'll make it smaller so you can see it. So see how much bigger it is? And there's no monitor that can present it. There's no monitor that can render it. There's no printer that can print it. There are some colors in some of the profiles that go out in Profoto, but they don't really occur in nature, and most people don't have those colors. So I kind of tell people just standardize for Adobe RGB 1998 or sRGB. Profoto is kind of for the future, and we can't really fully utilize it now anyway. So anyway, let's get back to professional print and layout. So do you have any other questions related to that yet? Any? Is that clear? Whoever you were? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Sure. Okay, so professional print and layout has these, what I call rip level functionality, right? So you can do, these kind of things and do copies and pastes and do layouts, right? For different photographs and stuff. So that is a great feature. And you would normally have to pay hundreds or thousands of dollars for a RIP program to do this type of thing. So for instance, I do perform a service for customers called an inkjet paper psychotherapy session. So I usually do it in my Pro 4100. So I have a standard template here where I can have two up on it. Some people want to give me two up on a page. And I have a standard template here where I can just drag and drop my files in there. And I help people decide what paper is right for them. Service is $99. I do it remotely. I also do it in the store. And some people don't want just one image. They want two images on a page. So they maybe have two different projects. And so I have a standard template here for my Pro 4100. And it's populated platine fiber rag, the size that I'm doing. Everything has been stored that's in this column. So, okay, so let's go back. I'm gonna get rid of that, drop this back in there. And I will rotate it to the left. Also, you see that the orientation is changed. So I'm gonna go back to single image. So this program, I want to cover some of the confusing parts of it, right? So, if you have a Canon Pro 1000, the paper is going in horizontally, right? But because this program was really developed with the roll paper printers in mind, it defaults to landscape, right? So you're not going to put the paper in this direction, right? You're going to put the paper in this direction. And that's how it's going to print. Okay, so just remember, in a Pro 1000, you would print it in this way. On a Pro 4100, when you're printing on a roll, it's certainly more economical to print horizontally, right, on a roll, because there's less waste. And I'll cover that a little later. So we're vertically oriented, where I've switched it back to single image. There is a gallery wrap feature where if you're printing on canvas, go to print preview here, and you see that it is, let's make it a bit bigger. Go there, make the paper size bigger. And then make this smaller. Okay, so now you see that it has the ability for you to make your adjustments here and be able to mirror the edges of the image. You can do continuous soft. It does all this for you without you having to build it in Photoshop. So if you're doing gallery wraps on canvas, that's a really nice feature as well. So we're going to go back to single image though. So here we go. And we'll take this guy and see it actually built a added a slot there. So if I drag and drop it in there, it will conform to that slot. And that slot is really big. So if you look down here, you can see where your slot size is. And I am actually going to do I'm going to go back to, let's see, I'm going to go choose Pro Platinum as my standard media typesetting for all glossy and luster paper. I'm going to go back to 8.5 by 11, which is letter size. And by the way, never choose margin. I hate that. So see where everything's gone gray around here? So Canon decided that, you know, for those of you who are having problems getting edge strikes on your paper, so you have a piece of paper and it starts curling, especially for those of you who live on the west side of town near the ocean where it's particularly humid, your paper starts curling up and then you get these black marks in the corners, right? So there are some settings on the printer. You can raise the print head, which will help keep that from happening. You can adjust the vacuum strength on the larger printers to keep it from happening. You can get a D&K D-roller, which is the device we have that allows you to put a reverse curl in the paper. And many of you know about that product, and we've sold them to you and sell quite a bit of them because it solves that issue. Well, Canon also built in for the Pro-1000 these settings where the printer won't start printing until here. So the dark gray area really is the sheet of paper. And I have activated a feature here called display printable area. So if I check that off, you'll see now it looks like a normal sheet of paper. I'll go back to landscape since this is a landscape image. If I go, my alignment is off, so I could move this wherever I want. See where it goes light gray? That's where you can't print. So these particular paper settings that say margin, basically it's going to start printing here rather than out here. And I'm going to take this alignment here and go center so you can see what's happening. So when it prints, it would crop that part out. And people do call me from time to time and say, why isn't my image printing fully? It's because this is the size that you have activated. So if I go back to US letter, you'll see it's fine. There's nothing being cut off. And in fact, when you're on this setting, you can also click borderless and print all the way to the edge. I'm not a big fan of borderless printing though, as many of you know. It uses more ink. It slows down the printer. The printer has to spit ink on the sides. It crops your image, obviously. So you lose a little bit of your image, and it fills up your maintenance cartridge more because the ink, when it spills out, it's got to drain down and go into the maintenance cartridge. So that feature, again, is here under other settings, custom settings, display printable area, right? So so if anything is going to get cut off, you would see it. Now on the Pro 4100, this is a bit more important because you don't have a margin unless you choose that 8.5 by 11, US letter size margin. You don't really have a margin where you can't print on the Pro 1000, but on the Pro 4100, the 24-inch and larger printers, those printers actually need to grab onto something. And when you choose cut sheet, you'll see that there's 3/4 of an inch at the bottom of the page, right? So if we were going to print this, I'm going to change this orientation here. So I just want to say again, this only changes the orientation on the screen. Doesn't change how it's printing, right? So when you load a sheet of paper in the 24-inch, 44-inch printers, you're going to see that there's this 3/4 of an inch down here where you cannot print, and 1/8 of an inch all the way around, because on the large format printers, it's just not taking the sheet in like on the Pro 1000. Pro 1000, you could do borderless printing. You can't do borderless printing on the 24-inch and larger printers because the printer has to grab onto the piece of paper, and it's grabbing on right here. So again, it kind of depends on how your mind works. Right now, it doesn't look like the image is centered. But what you've got to realize is that when I go to other settings here and go here and shut this off, it's absolutely centered, right? So display printable area feature is just there to show you where something's going to get cut off. So again, I could do this, and there's another way, is you see where it goes lighter, right? See where it goes lighter. So that part's going to get cut off. Okay, let's go back to the Pro 1000 again. Okay. So I'm going to go back to display printable area, and oops. Oh, display printable. Oh yeah, okay. So I'm on the Pro 1000 now. Okay. So I'm going to make sure my image size is 100%. Now you'll notice my image size, you can see it down here. It says 9.4. I can also hover over it and it will show me what it is. And people ask me all the time, why did you choose 9.4? Well, that's the exact size that I could print with even borders on my Pro 4100, which I use much more than my Pro 1000. So I set my image size for 8.5 by 11 images at 9.4, so I don't get cropped out when I'm printing on my large format printer. Okay, so I'm going to start tracking through here pretty quick. We've covered the Pro 1000. You can print from different printers. Also, this is where when you start up Canon Professional Print and Layout for the first time, you're going to need to add your printer, and it'll say add the printer. And you're going to go here and go add printer. You're going to find your printer, and then you'll see it come up. So I'm on a network here in my home studio. These two numbers look very different, same printer, right? So what the top number is it's called a MAC address. It doesn't have anything to do with your Apple computer. It's a unique address that's on the network card of the printer, and it will never change. This other number, it's generally a series of 3 numbers and a dot, 3 numbers and a dot, 1 number and a dot, 2 numbers, right? This is called an IP address, and this is what your computer has assigned as the address on your network for the printer. You can add the printer with either address. It depends on your system. For some people where they have their system set to dynamically assign an IP address, I'll choose this one because it never changes. In my instance here, I've chosen the IP address. It doesn't matter as long as it works. If I had my printer connected via USB, it would also come up as USB. This is also what you should do. There is kind of an occasional bug that people have where when they push print in the job manager, when you push print, there's something called a job manager that pops up. They'll get an error and it'll say check remote user interface or remote UI. That's because the printer got dropped from Professional Print and Layout. All you need to do is this procedure. Just go back over here. add the printer again. And then once it's added, you can go here and delete the printer. Just check on the first one. Your new one will be at the bottom. So just delete the old one so you don't get confused. Okay, so everything's in order. Be careful of these little guys here. These will compress your settings, right? I have people that will come to me and say, oh, I lost my settings, right? Here's another one. I lost everything. These are just collapsing your columns because some people just don't want to see all this stuff all the time. So be careful of those little speed bumps there, right? Okay, so media type. This is a very important and much overlooked choice. Everything in the driver means something, and it's important to be aware of what they do. So the media type tells the printer how much ink to squirt on the paper, what type of ink to use, whether it's photo black or matte black. It doesn't have anything to do with color. It just is the mechanical instructions on how to spray ink on the paper. If you choose poorly, then this is one of the major contributing factors to poor print quality. So the media settings that I use most are, and I've just standardized for this. I've done tests. If I choose Photo Paper Plus Glossy, Pro Platinum, Pro Luster, these four, there's not really going to be much change. These have to do with, these are Canon brand papers, and Epson does the same thing. So if you buy Canon Photo Paper Pro Platinum, you choose Pro Platinum. If you choose Photo Paper Plus Glossy 2, you choose that. So they're kind of making it easier for you to use one of their papers. But if you're using a brand like Canson Infinity or Hahnemühle or Moab or Innova or Awagami, you're going to choose some other, you're going to choose some of these as a base media setting. So essentially for all glossy and luster paper, I've standardized for Pro Platinum, okay? So this one could be photo black with a standard ink load. Pro Platinum is photo black with a medium high ink load. To me, there isn't a lot of difference between them. So again, for all glossy and luster paper, anything that has a shine or reflectivity, I really have standardized for Pro Platinum. Now for fine art papers, if you're using papers like Hahnemühle Photorag 308, Museum Etching, the thicker, heavier fine art papers, I have standardized for highest density fine art paper now. This may be different from what it was, but I tried years ago. I've discovered that highest density fine art paper is a 100% matte black ink media setting with the largest ink load, which is appropriate for heavy fine art papers. Now, if I was going to print on a thin paper, like Epson Ultra Premium, Epson Premium Presentation Matte, I would use heavyweight fine art paper. That is actually a bit of a combination of photo black and matte black and has a much lower ink load. And the reason why I would use it is because if I used highest density fine art paper, then there's going to be a lot of ink on the paper and it's going to get wavy because it's just too much ink. So for matte paper, again, for lighter papers, the lighter weight Awagami papers, for instance, lightweight matte papers, I use heavyweight fine art. And for the fine art papers, I use highest density fine art. Now, highest density fine art paper will force you to use the manual tray in the back. So you notice that I have Pro Platinum here and I could print from the top or the manual feed tray. I do get a lot of calls from people that say, I've used highest density fine art paper, but I can't choose the top tray. That is correct. It will not let you. It's baked in, again, mechanical instructions on how to print, how to spray ink on a piece of paper, what type of ink to use, amount of ink, and Canon's made a decision that if you use this media setting, it's going to force you to feed from the manual tray in the back you'll send the print job. You put your paper all the way in the back, push it all the way down. Just don't tap it in there, push it all the way down. And then when the job gets sent, it'll this LCD screen will say, printing will start from the manual feed tray. Do you want to start printing? And you push OK, and it'll print. So the concept is that on the very thick papers, because they are thick, they want you to have a bit of a lower angle of attack. So instead of coming here and doing this, it comes in at less of an angle and provides more reliable feeding. So just to let you know, if you go to highest density, or sorry, heavyweight fine art, you can go to the top or the back. And for some people, it's just convenience, right? I have people that do use fine art papers and will choose heavyweight fine art paper just so that they can feed it from the top if they choose to. Your print quality will suffer slightly, but it's totally up to you. So when we build profiles for people, we build them based on the media setting that you've chosen. And yes, I've done testing, and I find that highest density fine art does yield richer blacks and more density and more dimensionality. But I also have people that use heavyweight fine art on matte papers, and they're totally satisfied, and they get a feeder from the top and not from the back. And that works out for them. Some people have their printer all the way up against the wall, and it's hard for them to use that manual feed tray. So I'm going to go back to Pro Platinum here. And then your choices, we've kind of talked about that. Don't go to the margins, right? Hate those guys. And then let's see, you've got letter, which is standard, right? You've got some of these B sizes and A sizes. These are European sizes or Japanese sizes. So for instance, all of our Awagami papers are in A sizes, which is their standard for Japan. So you'll see 4x6, 5x7, 8x10. Those are your standard photo sizes. People ask me all the time, why are the papers not available a lot in these photo sizes? And the answer is because none of this stuff was really made for us photographers. It was really made for the printing industry. So everything really got standardized for US letter size. So if you take two 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper, put them together, 8.5, 8.5 is 17, right? So it's 11/17. Two 11/17s together are 17/22, right? So these are economical cutting patterns. And then we have 13 by 19, otherwise known as A3 plus. You'll see it's 12.95 by 19.016. That is the standard size all over the world. It also happens to be a double truck full bleed magazine size. So that's why we got kind of stuck with these odd size papers. Well, I will tell you that our two most popular size sheets are 8.5 by 11 and 13 by 19. 8.5 by 11 for the convenience of the size. 13 by 19 more fits a digital aspect ratio than 11/17 does. 11/17, you always have a bit of space on the sides. So those are our two most popular sizes for sheets. So let's go back to letter. Okay, borderless printing, like I said, in this, when you're choosing these sizes, you can print borderless, and just by clicking that button, and like I said, it basically expands the image to the size of the paper, right? So I do get people that say, well, I want to print like this, but I want to print borderless. Well, if you're going to print borderless, that means you're going to cut this out, right? Borderless printing really is the driver is expanding the image to the full size of the piece of paper and will overprint on the edges. Print quality. So I set my print quality the highest most of the time. It does make a difference. I find that high reduces print quality a little bit. But look, I had people that they have to make a lot of prints in a short amount of time, and they're going to choose high just so they can get the job done. But it does also relate to what we have here called clear coding. So this feature here tells the printer how to apply the Chroma Optimizer. So in all of these, the Canon Pro-1000, I think the Pro-300 as well, and all of the 24-inch printers, we have a cartridge in the printer called CO, which is Chroma Optimizer. And what it does, it is Canon's way of eliminating a phenomenon we call gloss differential. That's when you look at an inkjet print at an angle, and if you have a blown out highlight, the way light reflects off of ink on paper is very different than how it reflects off of paper white. And that is objectionable to some people. So when you choose auto, it will only go on the areas, the image area, where there's instructions to print ink. If you put it, so let's say, oh, let me take this image here. Let's say this is a blown out highlight. If I put it on auto, it won't cover it. So I'll see that valley. I'll see that difference in how the light's reflecting off of the paper versus the ink. If I set this to overall, then it gets put everywhere, including the white space. And what it does is it makes our images look more like darkroom images, darkroom prints. So you don't get that gloss differential off of silver gelatin emulsion. You don't get it off of color prints you would get from a lab. So if you do highest in, again, highest in auto, only goes on where there's instructions to print ink. If you do high and overall, it may not cover all of this. So my preferred combination is highest and overall. And yes, I've done testing. In general, when you're printing, you're using about 1 milliliter per square foot for printing an image. There is a slight difference between high and highest, but you're talking, less than 1 milliliter per milliliter, right? I mean, it's just a little tiny bit. So to me, if you can wait a little longer, the combination that is most preferred is highest and overall. And as you also notice, if I go to fine art papers, the matte media settings, it just goes to auto. The Chroma Optimizer is not used on matte paper, okay? It's only used as part of the photo black media setting on glossy and luster papers. You can't do spot gloss on matte paper. Believe me, I've tried, doesn't work. It just absorbs right into the matte paper. You don't even know it's there. And this really should say none because it isn't applied on matte paper. I'm going to go back to Pro Platinum here and then do overall. So here, this is new for this program, and use contrast reproduction was kind of always there. And then they added use depth information. So this is a setting that I never use. And every time I've talked to anybody at Canon, they say, don't use it. What its purpose is Canon in their marketing promotes that their printers are more compatible with their cameras, right? So if you're shooting camera raw files and you check this, it will make some adjustments based on the metadata of your raw file. And for me, I'm like, I've already done my changes in Photoshop. Why do I want the print driver to make choices for me? So I never check this button. And then this has to do here with the dual pixel feature of the Canon raw files as well. And so again, I never use it. So I always tell people, ignore it. Don't worry about it. It's just kind of an additional feature that Canon put in there. And it does process the image longer. And I mean, I've done some side-by-sides and I'm like, I don't really see a difference. So, we have engineers that make these products and they just kind of try to throw everything in there, including the kitchen sink. So ignore those. Okay, so now we're in the layout module here, and I can center my image on the page. I can also center it horizontally, so I can do a little this kind of stuff if I want, or center it vertically if I want to do this kind of stuff, right? So it's centered here and here, but not that way. And then of course you could do none and put it wherever you want. So this is how you center an image. Registered layout. So right now you see it's one slot, but if I was in multiple images, now you can see it's two slots. So there's some standard ones. I have, many of you know, I have business cards, and when I print them, I go ahead and I have a business card template. So I drop my business cards in there and I print them out on my printer and I cut them down. So yes, all my business cards are handmade. So I've set up a layout template that I can always go back to by going in here. And obviously it says it's switched to multiple image mode because I am now printing multiple images. So I'm going to go back. Okay, we're covering a lot of stuff here. So if you have multiple pages, right? So I can add a page here and take another image and add that. So you see down here, as I'm adding images, they're popping up here as preview, as little previews. So now if I have these two images in there, when I push print, I can batch print my images, right? So I can add another page and add another file, and I can add another page, and here I'll take another one. So now I have 4 images, and if I push print, all 4 of these will print. So be careful, right? Be careful. And also this button here where it says apply to all pages, if I do this, let's see what happened. Yep, it makes it, applies that change to all the pages. So I'm going to go back here and I'm going to go back to image size, and I'm going to go back to center, and all of them are back to the same spot. So that's what apply to all pages means. And then here, this is where you can very specifically, instead of doing this, change the size of your slot, right? So I'm going to go back to 9.4. I've changed my paper size. I'm going to go back to 8.5 by 11. So I can now go down here and change the size of the slot. If you want to, and the position is just, I have it on center, right? So this is grayed out. Some people like to look at it a slightly different way. They like to look at it from the position and the margin, right? So instead of the size, now I've switched over to, we have a margin on the top of 1 point and the bottom of 1.117 and 0.8 on the left and the right. So you can look at it either way. Maintain slot aspect ratio. So as I'm changing these, you can see that the aspect ratio is maintaining around the image, but I could do this. I could click that off and I can make the slot that big. I could do this. And because I have fit image to slot selected, it's going to just get in there, right? It's changing with, it's fitting it in the slot. Now, if I change it to, and I did this earlier, fill slot with image, now it makes it that way. So as I change it, it's actually filling it and thereby cropping it as well. And I'm going to go back to fit to image aspect ratio and fit image size again. Oh, what page did I go to? I'm on 8.5 by 11. Oh, that's right. These guys are a lot, these other files are a lot bigger. So I'm going to go here and do image size. There we go.
So I do have another question.
Yes.
with the different pages, how would that work with a roll of paper? Like, how does it know? Or do you only do that when when you're printing on a not on a roll, but on separate pages?
Oh, on a roll, it's magnificent. Okay, so I'm going to switch back over to the Pro 4100. Okay, and I'm going to choose for my 4100, I'm going to choose so I'm going to go to 24 by 18, right? Okay, I'm going to go so you see there's 18 by 24 and 24 by 18, right? And I'm going to tell the printer, I'm going to go to roll paper options here. And I'm going to tell it that it's a 24-inch roll. Okay. And then I am going to, let's see, let's make this, I'm not sure what size this is, but let's see, make it image size. Okay, I'm going to rotate it to the right. And then here is roll paper preview, right? So one page. I'm going to make it same size as the image size, rotate it to the right. And then, so you see, I've got pages, right? So if I push print, it's just going to print and it's going to cut. It's going to print and it's going to cut, right? So that's the other beauty of it. So if you're at the print lab, you got 10 images, drop your 10 images on each page, go over to the restaurant next door, come back, they'll all be done. I'll be cut and printed. So it's magnificent.
Okay, wow, that's amazing. So, well, okay, so before you chose the 24-inch roll, you chose
I added, I already had the pages added, right? So I'm going to rotate this to the left now. Right. So I have page 1. I have page 1 here. I got page 2 here. I got page 3 here. I got page 4 here.
But it says you chose 18 by 24.
Yeah. So I did that too. So if I'm on a 24-inch roll, 18 by 24 is, so this is a really hard concept for a lot of people to get their head wrapped around. There's image size and there's paper size and there's roll size, right? So when you're on a sheet of paper, you know what a sheet of paper looks like, right? I mean, it's, but on a roll, you kind of have to, there's a leap, right? You have a 24-inch roll. I could make that page size on that 24-inch roll anything I want. Here's a 24 by 10-inch, right? So by activating roll paper preview, which I do whenever I'm printing on rolls, because I want to know what I'm doing. If I just go here, I'm just seeing the image, right? I'm not really seeing how it's going to print. This now verifies how I'm going to print, right? So the thing is that when you do this, yes, everything in that column has got to be the same. It's got to be the same size, right? So here I would rotate this to the left and I shrink it down, right? But you're also utilizing the roll, right, which is 24. So that's why I've chosen a custom size that's 24 by 10, right? And the other thing that I can do here, just to show you, is I do multiple images, right? Let's do, see, now I'm getting fancy, right? I do here, I'm going to get the fit to image aspect ratio. I am going to now move this over here. I'm going to move this over here. So this is other things you can do, especially when you're on a roll, right? I was kind of going to get to this after I got to, you know, some of the other stuff, but you can see how that works. And the reason why I'm choosing a width first rather than a height, right? So let's say I go to 18 by 24, right? Well, now I'm wasting paper, right? So whenever you're printing on any printer, you have to realize that the paper sizes are always going to be width versus height, right? I don't want to print 18 by 24. I want to print 24 by 18, right? That's maximizing my roll. right? And I can move this wherever I want in here.
Okay, great. So if
That
you,
makes sense?
yeah, so then you're gonna select essentially the largest, for the paper size, you're gonna select like the largest of all your images that you're printing. And then if you're printing something smaller, you just fit multiple on one page.
You can do that. Also, I'm going to delete these here just for some simplicity. Okay, so I have this page here. We now have another choice here on the Pro 4100 on the larger printer. It's called auto nesting. All right, so I can click on this and I could just drag and drop my images in here. And it's going to just choose the most economical printing pattern. There it is. And here's another one. And then once they're in there, you can move them around a little bit, right? So some people like this feature here, so they can just drag and drop images in there, and it'll, so you got to be a little careful as well, because now, as you can see, it's just giving the roll width, right? It's not giving you any size. So it's going to cut at about right here. It's going to just give you a little bit of a white space down there. Also, if you're in, since I'm in this mode, there is, so you can adjust, if you're doing borderless printing, you can adjust the extension, right? Of how much it's going to overprint on the edges. There's a button here. Some people check this. I'm not a big fan of it. Always print in the finest quality setting. Finest quality is higher than highest. And it really only applies if you have really fine text, slows the printer down dramatically. So I don't really ever check that button. Some people like to print unidirectionally, which also slows down the printer by half. So normally the printer goes left and it prints right and it prints left. Some people like to slow it down so that it prints only in one direction, right? I don't ever really choose that feature. Add update media information, a really important button when you're updating your media files. That is going to be more of a discussion for the media configuration tool. Some of you, I have helped use that tool. And when you do updates to this, where you're over here and you saw those custom media files, you have to push that button in order for the information to be brought over from the printer to professional print and layout, or you can accomplish the same thing by adding the printer again, and it'll bring over all of your information. And then here is, if you click millimeters, all these sizes get put into millimeters, so I never check that button. Inches is what I normally select. Output method, very interesting. When you're in the Pro 4100, the 4100 or the 2100, any of the larger printers, they have a hard drive built in. So in print mode, you just push print and it puts print. In this mode, save in job box, you have 29 boxes, and you can click print, and you obviously save the name, send it to the job box. And if you have prints that you print regularly, you can store them in any one of those 29 boxes, go up to the printer, be able to choose that box, choose the file you want. And as long as everything is the same, everything, the paper, the size, the profile, everything's the same, just push print, and you don't even need the computer to print from. It literally saves that job to the job box, which is great. Display all confirmation dialogues. I click that off. I don't want to ever see that. When you first start up the program, there is a and after you start up the program, you go through all this, you push print. There's a confirmation box that comes up that is this thing where it displays all of your settings. And some people like that as a step to remind them, that, if they made a mistake. I don't use it anymore. I hate that. So I usually just click do not ever show it again, make it go away, but you can bring it back. And then custom settings, really the only thing I set here is display printable area and display images in high definition. Reflective color adjustment and preview. I'll talk about that in a minute. And then when you start from Photoshop, if you use it as a plugin, right, the current image you have on display will be the primary image that shows up in professional print layout. And I'll go over that in a second too. Right now, I'm still using it as a standalone application. In layout here, this is controlling your image slot. You can specify, it's specifying the size, slot size. When you just drag and drop an image in, I've set it to image size, right? That's why everything's coming in at 100%. We're fitting the image to the slot rather than filling it. So this is kind of all the stuff that I'm showing you, but you can also kind of hard code some of it over here. And then auto nesting, it's giving like 1.5 inches in between each image when I'm drag and dropping images in there. So there's some interesting things in here. And these are kind of hidden. Most people don't know that these even exist. So I don't think I went over it in that much detail last time, but I think this is worthy of going through here and just kind of letting you know that these settings do exist and nothing necessarily to change unless you really want it to. This name cannot be used. What does that even mean? This name cannot be used. That's interesting. Okay. We canceled. Okay, so let's see. Let's go. Oh, we covered a lot of stuff here. Let's go back to let's go back to the Pro 1000 again. And let's get rid of some pages here. Okay, so I'm going to go back to Pro Platinum. And so if I was at square one, right, this is what I would do. Pro Platinum, letter size, single image, right? I've chosen my printer, top feed, highest overall, alignment center. We've gotten up to this point here, right? Show crop marks, we can do crop marks. So you see over here, you've got these here, and then you can also move the crop marks out, right, from the edge. So if you're going to cut along these lines here, you want a little white border around the image, you can do that. But you notice that if you do cut, you're going to lose your other crop mark. So I actually requested this. I can take credit for this. Inside corner crop marks. So now you still have, if you cut this off, you still have a crop mark on the inside. So usually print without crop marks, but if you're printing multiple images on a page and want to use a heavy straight edge with a safety, bar on it, so you don't cut your fingers off, that's a great feature to have. If you want to be my favorite customer, you can print your margins in black. Some people really like the way that looks, but it uses up a lot more black ink. And here we are at the bottom, color mode. I use ICC profiles, my preferred mode, all the time. So this is where you're going to use a profile. So if you're in Photoshop and you go to File and Print, there's an area that says Photoshop manages color. Guess what? Photoshop never managed the color. I always hated what it said. It really is, you are using and specifically selecting a profile to use. So let's say I was going to use Canson Platine, and I apologize, I have thousands of profiles. And I would use my custom profile for Canson Platine Fiber Rag. Where is it? It's coming. There it is. Okay. So these are all my custom profiles for my printers. and I now choose Canson Platine. And when we build profiles for people, we have a custom profiling service. It says ProPlat, and that tells me that that is the media setting for up here. So I'm choosing Pro Platinum. That's what Pro Plat means, Pro Platinum. So the manufacturers will, on their websites, generally recommend a media setting. It could be for Platine. Sometimes they might use premium luster, or they might use premium semi-gloss 2280 or whatever. So whenever you're loading profiles into your system, which by the way, should go here. You double click on your hard drive. This is called the root directory. And then you go to your library and you go to your color sync folder. And this is the profiles folder you should be using. And I'm going to go to lists. So yeah, I've got over 1,000 profiles in my profiles folder. I also, what I do for customers is when I work with them, I simply take this and drag it over here. You see, I already have a shortcut. So I never really have to go to my double click, double click, double click, double click. I just have it right here because I live in my profiles folder. So I have a shortcut here under my favorites that I've created. So use ICC profile, Canson, and then use the specific profile for your paper. These are very important. If you don't choose wisely, you will get poor print quality. Use driver matching is just like what they call printer manages color. So you see now this is grayed out. I can't click on it. So what it's doing is it's just looking at the media setting, Pro Platinum up here, and it's loading Canon's generic profile for that paper, for their paper. So it's not right for this paper. So I never have ever used printer manages color, and I've never ever used driver matching because it is not correct. There's a choice here for no color correction. Also grays this out. All of this cannot be touched. You only use this when you're printing out color patches that you're going to provide to us for making custom profiles. That's what that's for. Or unless there is a color profile embedded in the file that you want to use for the paper that you're using. But most people don't do that. So, and then there's a black and white mode, right? Which is just like Epson's advanced black and white mode. So you can go in here and then go to color settings, which I never do. Talk about that in a second. And you can adjust your tonality of your black and white prints in here. But I never use that mode ever. I always convert my images to black and white in Photoshop or Lightroom. I use Silver Effects Pro. I save my file as an RGB file, and I use my custom profile to print. If you want to go here and you want to rely on the driver, fine. But to me, that is not reliable and repeatable. You would have to go in here and rely on your notes as to what you did. I would rather set the file in Photoshop, save it, and then print in color using my custom profile. Usually I'm going to get much better results. Also, since I've been in here, now you see that it's back to its original state for color. I tell every single one of my classes this, every single one, never, ever, ever go in here. If you start doing this kind of stuff, right, and you call me up, or you're at the lab and you're with Jason and he says, we're not getting good color, and I go in here and I see that you've made changes, I will cut your fingers off. Okay, this is not the place to make changes. Keep it at default. Okay, because what ends up happening is you make changes here, it doesn't revert back, it stays, and then you've messed up the next person that tries to print. So I always tell people, collapse this, ignore it, never go in there. Always make your changes in Photoshop and Lightroom. Rendering intent, perceptual or relative color metric. Perceptual is what most people use. 90% of the people I know have used perceptual. 10% use relative color metric. 99.5% of people have no idea which one to use. My suggestion is Perceptual. It is the one that makes your images look more normal if there are colors that are out of gamut. Out of gamut meaning you have a paper profile and the colors that are in the image are out of gamut for the paper profile. So Perceptual will bring them in. It'll do a calculation and bring them into gamut. Relative colorimetric will clip them out. I can tell you from a lot of testing I've done, if you choose relative colorimetric, it can make your colors that are out of gamut look brighter. But most people use Perceptual. If everything's in gamut, it doesn't matter. Black and white images, totally in gamut. There's nothing ever going to be out of gamut for a black and white file. So Perceptual is my choice. And if you're having trouble rendering a color, then I say go to relative colorimetric, right? But if you're going to choose relative colorimetric, always choose use black point compensation. It does not do anything in Perceptual, right? Because remember, Perceptual, anything's out of gamut, it's going to bring it into gamut. With relative, it clips it out. So if you don't choose black point compensation in relative, your blacks get totally crunched. Everything just looks black. You're not going to get any shadow detail. So most people choose this by default because it doesn't do anything with Perceptual, but you have to use it for relative. And then we have some ability here to print certain things. And just text, there's no ability to change the font or positioning, but let's say I go, here is a header, right? So that'll appear up here. Then there's a footer. You can do print to print settings. So sometimes when I do testing, I'll do this. I can also put in here some additional text. I can go, here is a footer. Right, click off of that. So here's a footer goes there. And then you can also print the photo information. So there's some minor ability here to, for documentation purposes, print some text. Okay, then we talked about adding pages and taking them away. This button here reduces the view of the preview and you can increase it. You can also set it to like fit to width, that type of thing. This is again just changing the orientation on the screen, not how it's going to print. And then this is soft proofing. So if I click this, it looks pretty much the same for Canson Platine because it's a very big profile. But if I go to, let's say, we'll pick on Canon durable banner. Oh, it changes, right? So because that paper doesn't really have any major, it's just like a vinyl banner type of material. Here is a canvas, right? Also doesn't look very good. So soft proofing, what it's doing is it's overlaying the printer profile that you're using onto your monitor. So it's giving you another level of predictability, so you can see what the profile is doing. You should really be doing this in Photoshop to begin with, because by the time you get to here, you're ready to push print. So that is professional print and layout. So now I'm going to show you, I'm going to quit it. I can quit it either by going to File and I go up here to Professional Print Layout, quit, or I could push the little red button as usual. So now I'm in Photoshop and move this guy, next software out of the way. I have an image. Oh, go ahead.
Where did you get those printer profiles? The ones that are specific to your paper? Do you download them?
We have a custom profiling service. So the ones that say EJ, those are all ones that we've created at our shop that are custom profiles. Custom profiles are always going to give you better results. Alternatively, yes, depending on the paper you're using, you can go to manufacturer's website and download their generic profiles. Will they get you in the ballpark? Yes, they will give you good results. Our profiles give you better results. And those are custom made for specific papers on specific printers. Because I can tell you with absolute certainty, my Canon Pro-1000 back here and my Epson P9 SureColor P900 print very differently from the very same two printers I have in the shop. Colors can be at least 5 to 10% off. You would think that all the printers print exactly the same. They do not. So when the manufacturer provides you with a profile, I talk about it, it's like going to Walgreens and getting reader glasses, right? Get you in the ballpark, get you kind of going, but it isn't specific to your printer. So our custom profile service is $99. You would print out color patches using no color correction in Canon Professional Print and Layout. And then provide us with those patches, either bring them into the store or mail them to us. And then we create the profiles and email them back to you and give you instructions on how to use them. So I'm gonna open up this file and I'm gonna open up this file. So now what I'm gonna do is to access Professional Print and Layout as a plugin for Photoshop. So I have two files open. This one is up front, right? This is the one that I've chosen. So now I'm going to go to File and Automate. And you see Canon Professional Print and Layout right here. So it's bringing both of those files into Canon Professional Print and Layout. You see that the one that I had up front is selected. And the other one is down here as a preview. And I can add my page and drag and drop that in there. So if you have multiple images open up in Photoshop, you can manage them this way. But once you're using it as a plugin for Photoshop, you cannot click back onto Photoshop. You have to close the program first, right? Which is why I use it as a standalone application mostly. Now, if I go to Lightroom, you can also access it as a plugin for Lightroom. So I have this image selected. I'll choose this one and control this one. Oop, no, option. Nope. Command. Okay, so I'm just going to pick these three. So I have this one selected, and I can go to File and Plugin Extras and go to Canon Professional Print. Oh, man. Okay, this is good. So this bug comes up every once in a while. That means the temporary folder is no longer available. And this gives me the ability to show you how to install the plugin. I'm going to skip this time. This is great. I love it when this happens. Okay, so when you install Professional Print and Layout, when you install Professional Print and Layout, it really only installs the program ready to go. There is another file here called Install Files. So if you ever get that bug in Lightroom, you're going to have to do this procedure. And if you want to use it as a plugin for Photoshop, you have to do this procedure as well. So it loads a plugin installer and it finds the place for Lightroom automatically, because the place where Lightroom stores its plugins is always the same, right? It's always the same place. So I'm going to click yes. That's going to solve that other problem. The next issue is Photoshop, right? I'm on 2022 and the plugin installer hasn't been updated for 2022 yet. So I'm going to click, the message here is you want to add it to Photoshop 2021. It's found. Every version of Photoshop has its own plugins folder. So it has discovered that I did have 2021 on it at one point, and there's a plugins folder there. I don't want to install it there. I want to install it for 2022. So I'm going to click no here. I'm going to get this window, and I'm going to click next. I'm going to click Photoshop 64-bit browse, and I'm going to find my plugins folder for Photoshop 2022. And I'm going to double click on it and click open and then next. this is how you install the plugin for Photoshop. And now I am going to type in the password for my computer, which it always makes you do. And the install has been done successfully. So now I'm going to click exit. I'm going to go back to Lightroom. And I'm going to go ahead, and those three items are still selected. So now I'm going to go File, Plugin, Extras. Oh, what is this? I don't care about this. And we're going to go to Plugin Extras, and that is how you solve that issue. You see here, they're opening up in Professional Print and Layout, and all three of those items are here, and it's even created 3 pages for you. Now, I do not ever really recommend printing out of Lightroom. Weird things happen with Lightroom. I don't really know what color space these are, right? And it always exports at 240 PPI. And it says Adobe Rgb 1998. I'm not really sure if it is, but the 240 always bothers me. So Photoshop is a much more specific program to print from. So if you want to print from Lightroom, that's fine. I have a philosophy. All of this is really, to me, about happiness, right? If you're happy printing out of Lightroom, print out of Lightroom. Who am I to tell you, right? But I can tell you that I have, in many instances, had issues with a file printing correctly out of Lightroom. And when I go to Photoshop, it prints more accurately. I have much more control over color space and things like size and resolution out of Photoshop than I do out of Lightroom. So let's say I liked everything in this column, right? It's all set up perfectly. I can go here, custom, save current settings, Pro 1000, Canson, Platine, 8.5 by 11. So now I have a stored setting. As soon as I change anything, it now switches to custom. So now I'm messing things up, right? I got a before. I'm getting all confused. I don't know what I'm doing here, right? I'm all over the place. Now I can go back here and I can go to my saved setting and everything gets repopulated back to normal. So when people buy printers from us, they will generally hire me to help them set them up and go through this again, right? I usually spend a few hours with people. On the desktop printers, we have a remote setup fee. That's a flat fee. It's not by the hour. On the bigger printers as well, we have a flat fee. I do them remotely. I also, for a little bit more, do them on site. And as you can see, this is a really feature-rich program, but it is exclusively for printing. You don't want to start doing editing here, right? You don't want to start, messing around with your color settings. Your image is ready to go, ready to be brought into this program. And then, of course, when you're all done, you push print and they print. And then you can do also multiple copies down here. Oh, this button here, this changes the orientation of the preview items on the screen. So I usually set it here. Okay, that was a lot. Let's see, do we have any questions? And thank you for all your questions. Kiki is your name?
Yes, thanks for answering the questions.
Good. Hey, what else you got?
I think I asked all my questions.
Really?
I think so. Well, besides about the class for tomorrow, but.
So the class tomorrow is 10 to noon. Like I said, I'm going to be doing them monthly. And the purpose is to orient you on how to load paper in the Canon large format printers, because they are big and they are intimidating. But I always tell people printers are big dumb toasters. They don't do anything unless you tell them to do it. And in fact, I will tell you, if you are printing out of professional print and layout, which is how I'm teaching, the software here will override the hardware. So whatever you like on the Canon Pro-1000, you see on the LCD screen, it'll say like Pro Luster and 8.5 by 11. You know what? It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean anything. The software, whatever you choose here, is going to override whatever you have set on the printer. So if you have a different media setting set here than on the printer, it's going to use this. I also, when I set up the desktop printers, there is a setting to ignore what it's called detect paper media setting mismatch. I usually shut that off and I just use the software. I don't even set what's on the printer. I tell it to ignore the size, just do whatever the software tells you to do. Because, you know, I'm going to make the assumption that you know what you're doing here, right? So I do that on the desktop printers for sure. So if I go back to the Pro 4100, you see there's some new features activated. You've got roll paper preview, right? You've got paper source goes from cut sheet to roll 1, roll 2, or auto. You're going to use in the lab auto or roll 1 because these units do not have the second roll mechanism. All of the Canon printers have an optional feature where it's like $1,000 more, where you can actually load 2 rolls of paper on the printer at the same time, or use it as the second roll feeder as a take up spool. So just use roll 1 or roll paper auto if you are printing on a roll. And then you've got some features for borderless printing here. And so if I were to go fit paper width, borderless printing, and then you can see it's filling up the entire roll. And then you can rotate 90 degrees, so you can change the orientation of how that's printing borderless. Like I said, I hate borderless printing. So there's US letter and in portrait, and then there's US letter landscape, right? That's more economical use of our paper, right? So we always choose the landscape when we're printing on rolls rather than the portrait. And then you have roll paper options here. So when you load a roll of paper in the printer, there are sensors that tell it how wide the roll is. But you have to tell the software how wide the roll is. It's not going to know. So I'm just going to say it's a 24-inch roll. You can automatically cut. There is a horizontal cutter in the large format printers. Does not cut vertically, so it only cuts horizontally. But you can set it to not cut. So this would, if you say no, it'll get to the end of the print. It'll stop and it'll say, do you want to cut? And there's a button, a virtual button that's a cut button, and it'll then move it into position for the size of the page that that you've set, and then cut it off. So it doesn't cut and drop into the basket. And then here's another setting for cutting where you can just print a guideline and it'll just keep on printing, and then you can cut it off manually. A lot of people that print canvas do that because they're afraid that the cutter is going to get dull over time. Or if it's very humid that day, it could get stuck and jammed. So some people don't want to have the printer cut at all. They're going to cut itself. This button here is very dangerous button. I have some people that that click on it because they want to, quote, save paper. The problem with this button, and we have gotten some calls from people. So when you're at the lab and you get stuck and Jason doesn't know the answer, or Matthew, who's there on the weekends, they text me, I'm available, right? So some people have clicked that button. Doesn't change anything on the screen. What it does is it will sense the edge of your image and it will ignore your border. So let's say I've got a 2-inch border here that it doesn't affect the sides. It only affects the top and bottom. It'll start printing within 1/4 of an inch of your image size here and stop printing with 1/4 of an inch at the end. So I do, if you're really interested in maintaining your borders, do not ever click that button. That is a bad button. I've had labs call me up. I'm having borders on my prints and it's not printing the borders right. I'm like, you went in there and you pushed the button I never told you to push. And they go, no, I didn't. I go, yes, you did. Go to roll paper options. Oh my God, I don't know who pushed that button. So it's a dumb toaster. It'll only do what you tell it to do. So if something's wrong, don't blame it on the printer first. You know, just take a breath and go, okay, what did I do? And just backtrack through the settings and make sure that everything is set properly. Okay. Hey, look at that, Jason. We got 8 minutes to spare.
Eric, thank you so much. I'm a little blacked out here. Sorry. If anybody has questions for Eric, now would be the time to ask. So chime up.
Yes, I have a question regarding rice paper. Which type of media to choose to print on rice paper?
So are you getting an uncoated paper, or are you printing on the paper that's called Hanamule rice paper?
Yes,
A Hanamule rice paper?
Hanamule rice paper.
Right, so they recommend heavyweight fine art, because if you use highest density fine art, that paper is only 100 GSM. It's very thin, and highest density fine art paper will just, it'll put too much ink on it. So
Okay.
it's interesting. I just printed on that paper a little while ago, and I used, in fact, I also created a custom profile for it. And I believe I used Profoto Rgb, PQR. Oh, I'm getting there. Rice paper, yeah. Heavyweight fine art paper is what I used.
Thank you.
That was easy. Come on. Come on, guys. I need a challenge. I'm ready to go.
I have a question.
Okay.
I haven't printed in a while, so when I got back to start printing again, I noticed that my Canon Pixma Pro-100, all of a sudden I have 20 options for the printer profile. And I don't remember that many options, and I had it down to a science where my prints were coming out okay, but now I have 20 options. So I've tested a couple of them, and I found the Epson Srgb to be closest, but not perfect to what I used to do. So any advice, or do I just keep testing, or what happened? I don't know what happened. All of a sudden the options like tripled. I don't know. I got a new Mac, and then I got it upgraded to Monterey, and I don't see a new driver for Monterey available. So I'm sort of like starting from scratch after I had this thing all sorted out.
Okay, so I am going to put my email address in the
Okay.
chat.
Perfect.
Email me and we'll sort it out.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
So the driver, like I said, it's tricky. Epson Srgb is not a printer profile. That is an Epson Srgb profile for scanning. I believe. Do you have an Epson scanner?
I do too. That's
Yeah.
probably
So
why I
that
got that on there. Yeah.
yeah. So what happens a lot of times is when you're looking at your profiles, it's
Yeah.
giving you everything in your system,
I got
including things that are not printer profiles.
I got
So I have people that, especially in the monitor display preferences, they will choose on a Mac, Adobe Rgb 1998. They'll say, oh, I'm printing Adobe I'm looking at the image in Adobe Rgb 1998. You're not. That is a
Right.
reference file that Photoshop and Lightroom and other programs use to create an Adobe Rgb 1998
right.
file. So it's not a monitor profile, and
Got it.
people think it is, and it isn't. So because all Apple monitors now are P3, you can't
Right.
make a P3 monitor magically become an Adobe Rgb 1998 monitor by making that selection.
Gotcha.
So you're choosing, I mean, it might look good. And like I said, the bottom line is it's all about happiness, right?
Right.
But we also want to go for accuracy. And when you possibly reinstall the driver or whatever happened, something changed. So we just need to kind of sort through it, and we can do that offline.
That'll be awesome. Yeah, no, when I'm working in Photoshop, I'm setting everything to Adobe RGB. And I used to set it to Profoto Rgb at one time. And I had the prints coming out great, you know, and all of a sudden I don't know, I guess between changing the camera, the laptop or upgrading or something, the options switched on me.
Well, you probably also have loaded that AirPrint driver.
Yes, okay.
That's like the biggest thing right now. is
Right,
the-
well, I
there's
jotted
just
down your
lots of
notes
problems
about
with the
that.
AirPrint driver.
Yeah, okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Sure. Anybody else? Yay, we did it.
All right. Thanks so much, everybody, for being here. We really appreciate you supporting Los Angeles Center of Photography, and we cannot wait to see you in the print lab. You can schedule your own time in the print lab for Thursdays and Sundays through our website, and I had put the link in the chat up there. So please do click on that, and you can schedule yourself, and myself or Matthew will be there. And we will help you as much as we can with some logistic stuff, but the expectation is that you are mostly self-sufficient, and that's for everybody's benefit, mostly yours. That way you have complete control over your creativity, and that's a pretty wonderful thing. So I think that kind of wraps it up. Eric, do you have anything else?
Like I said, my email is in the chat. If anybody needs help or has issues you'd like to discuss offline, I'm here for you. I spend most of my days helping people out of really strange situations with their printers. So I try to get to everybody that emails me back really quickly, but obviously when I'm in a class like this, I'm not checking my emails and voicemails and texts. Generally when I'm with a customer, like I'm going to be down at a college this afternoon, I'm not going to respond immediately, but I try to get back to everybody the same day. And if we can't resolve it on that day, you know, I kind of schedule out, you know, weeks in advance to help people as quickly as I can. I'm always very busy, but I also try to be very accessible. So go ahead and send me an email and with your issues. And if I can get just do a quick email and resolve it that way, great. If not, we need to get on via Zoom. We could do that as well. So thank you all for coming. Really appreciate it. I know this was a lot of information. My classes are generally very much like trying to take a sip of water from a fire hydrant. But I also like to be thorough, and hopefully this was helpful. And then if and when Canon comes out with another new version of this software, we'll do another video. So I'd like to have new information up all the time.